What is going on, everyone? It is your boy Coozco, and I am bringing you another Destiny 2 build video here today, and the build of choice this time is a Strongholds Restoration Invincibility build. Now, as of right now, Strongholds are a little bit glitched just because it grants Restoration ×2 any sword hit. You don't even have to block, you just have to run up to an enemy and get a sword hit to activate Restoration ×2. And if you are using a sword that is not a solar sword, it will give you 4 seconds. If you are using a solar sword with the Restoration mod, then you will get 8 seconds off of your first kill of ×2. Bungie 100% is going to fix this just because this build basically makes you invincible as long as you swing your sword. You honestly don't ever have to block unless you are using the Lament to get that extra revved consumption damage. But honestly, you can just swing away with this build and you will never die. You will constantly activate your Restoration ×2. Moving straight into our subclass, you're going to want Towering Barricade along with Throwing Hammer and Thermite Grenade. You can honestly run whatever you want here, but I found Throwing Hammers to be a little bit better and Thermite Grenade to be a little bit better than all of the other grenades as well. As for our aspects, we are running Soul Invictus along with Consecration. I did run this with Roaring Flames. However, if you are using your hammer to get kills, you are going to proc your Restoration over and over again, bringing it all the way back down to 4 seconds, even if you have it stacked up to 12 seconds. So we really want to stay away from killing enemies with our hammer, using our Consecration instead, or our Sunspots. So as for Soul Invictus, Solar ability Final Blows, Hammer of Soul impacts, and defeating scorched targets creates Sunspots. Your abilities regenerate faster and your super drains more slowly while standing in a sunspot. Sunspots apply Scorch and deal damage to targets inside. Entering a sunspot also applies Restoration. This is just going to help with our overall survivability as well as our ignitions. And then also Consecration, this is just going to ignite anything that we actually get our full melee off on. And it also does a lot of damage. It is just great for ad clear, and I would use this instead of actually using your Throwing Hammer just to activate Radiant. And then moving on to our Fragments, it's very simple. We have Ember of Empyrean, Ember of Torches, Ember of Solace, and Ember of Ashes. First off, Ember of Empyrean, solar weapon or ability Final Blows extend the duration of Restoration and Radiant. This is how we stay at ×2 Restoration and at 12 seconds of Radiant, basically at all times. Next, Ember of Torches. This is how we make ourselves Radiant and our allies Radiant. Powered melee attacks against combatants make you and nearby allies Radiant. Also, Ember of Solace, Radiant and Restoration effects applied to you have increased duration. This is going to allow us to get up to 12 seconds of Restoration ×2 when we get those kills. Last but not least, just for more damage, we have Ember of Ashes. We apply more Scorch stacks to targets. Also for your stats, I would recommend going high into Resilience, Discipline, and Strength. You do not need Mobility. You also don't need Recovery because of your Restoration ×2, and Intellect does not matter at all. We are not looking to use our supers really ever, unless we are in a boss damage phase. Moving straight into the mods on our gear. On our helmet, we are running Solar Siphon along with a heavy ammo finder just to make sure that we have ammo in our sword and we are getting orbs of power whenever we get kills with our solar weapons. On top of that, we have a grenade cooldown mod. Causing damage with melee attacks reduces your grenade cooldown with impact induction, and also we are going to create an orb of power on every grenade final blow as well. And then on our chest, we are running 1 void resistance. Make sure that you run a void resistance based off of whatever activity you are doing. Then on top of that, we run double lucent blades. We are not using anything for ammo or ammo consumption, so we are running lucent blades to swing our sword faster. And then of course, whatever weapons you're using, if you're using the Lament, put on 3 solar mods. If you're using the Fallen Guillotine, put on 3 void weapon mods. And then of course, double time dilation to keep that weapon surge up as long as you can. And then for the artifact mods, since there basically isn't any solar mods for this season, all we have is authorized void mods just in case we are using the Falling Guillotine. We also have authorized melee mods on and counter charge. That way we can gain a stack of armor charge whenever we stun a champion as well. I also wanted to make sure that I go over weapon synergy and what other swords you can use other than the Lament, because of course I feel like everyone using this build is using the Lament right now. However, I ran into a situation where in the new dungeon, if you are soloing any of these bosses, you're going to want to run Arbalist. Therefore, if we are running Arbalist, we can't put on our Lament, and after doing some damage testing on the first boss, you actually can do more damage with the Falling Guillotine than you can with the Lament. And this is solely because if you do not take the boss's shield down with Arbalist, then you will do around 1 million damage to his shield, and then the other 1.5 million damage that you are doing is going to go to his health bar. Whereas if you have Arbalist, you can get rid of that shield right away, then all of the damage you deal will go directly to his health bar instead of his shield that he regenerates every single damage phase. So I was getting very good damage numbers with Falling Guillotine, even Abide the Return, and also Temptation's Hook. I do want to try out the Strand Sword from the Helm, however I do not have a Relentless Strikes one, so I want to make sure that I have one that actually can do some damage instead of testing against these God Roll swords and seeing that it doesn't do too much. However, if you're going to stick to a sword that is going to do a lot of damage and is going to keep your ammo reserves up as well, I would go with Falling Guillotine, or honestly any sword with Relentless Strikes, Whirlwind Blade. Also, other weapons that you can use to keep your restoration up. If you are using a Falling Guillotine, the way you would use it, since it is a void sword, is you would get one kill with it, and then you would swap to your solar weapon, being the Cartesian or any hard hitting weapon, maybe even a glaive. I wouldn't recommend an SMG because sometimes you can't get the kill fast enough to reproc your restoration, and that is why I recommend something like a fusion rifle or a glaive so that you can one-shot an enemy and get your restoration stacks up before you switch back to your sword and get more kills. And of course, as for primaries, you don't need to run any primary. You are honestly never going to use it. I would recommend running a shoot to loot kinetic tremors. It is going to come in very handy if you run out of ammo. And it is just overall great for this build because you don't necessarily want to run directly into the fight if you don't have any way of activating your restoration ×2 if you have no heavy ammo. I honestly do think that this is one of the best builds in the game, but I believe it is just because of the bug right now. So therefore, if you are trying to get the solo flawless done in the deep dungeon, then please use this build right now, because once it gets fixed, trust me, it will not be this good. And not only that, but if you are soloing the Ghost of the Deep dungeon, you will never die with this build. As long as you get your kills, as long as you have ammo, and as long as you're playing smart, you will never die, and you will be able to at least get off 2.5 million damage every boss rotation, at least for the first boss. So if you want an easy way to kill the first boss in the dungeon while doing the solo flawless, make sure that you get on your Titan and do it on your Titan. That way you can pull out this Strongholds build on the first boss. As you move on to the final boss, I would recommend running a linears such as Briar's Contempt with a Lorelai's build. I will have a Lorelai's build coming out in a couple days as well, because I will be doing the solo flawless and I will be showing you what builds I am using. So therefore, I do recommend the Lorelai's for final encounter. But as for most of the dungeon, this build is what you're going to be using for that restoration ×2, that invincibility. Also, one more thing that I forgot to mention about with the glaives is the glaives are very, very good for this build if you don't want to take damage. I got really lucky with a Greasy Luck drop of Lead from Gold and Unstoppable Force. Lead from Gold is going to allow me to basically never run out of ammo with this weapon, because I can pick up special ammo stacks and I can also pick up heavy ammo stacks. And also with Unstoppable Force, blocking damage with your shield increases projectile damage for a short time. Therefore, we could basically just sit there, block, and shoot forever. We basically never really have to stop blocking until we reload. And while we are blocking, we are invincible. We have restoration ×2, and we also have that blocked damage from our shield, and we have increased damage on top of that with Unstoppable Force. I also have another role of Immovable Object Unstoppable Force. Immovable Object, dealing range damage, grants increased weapon energy while you're stationary with your shield raised, and this works back and forth with Unstoppable course as well. Blocking damage with your shield increases projectile damage for a short time. So basically with this, you would just get one sword kill, pull out your glaive, start blocking with your shield, and just start firing right away. And you will get kills, and you will notice how much extra damage this actually does. And not only that, since it is a solar weapon, we are also reprocking our restoration ×2, making sure that we are never dying, and that timer is getting up to 12 seconds every single time. But these glaives are more for the hunter's new exotic, so I definitely would just stick to a Cartesian. It is a lot easier to kill bosses with, a lot easier to kill majors with, and overall it just does a lot more damage, and it is just a little bit more consistent. So if you have a Cartesian, throw that on with a major spec and you will be loving life. That is basically it for the build, everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, if this video did help you out, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, as it really does help me out to push more videos. And before I get out of here, I hope you all appreciate everything and everyone you have around you. Have a great day. I love you all, and enjoy the rest of the gameplay.